All right, let's dive into one of the biggest questions in any government, the executive. We're talking about the very heart of political power, the person or people in charge of actually running the country. And the challenge is huge. How do you create a leader who's strong enough to get things done, but not so strong they become a tyrant? Let's take a look at how different countries have tried to solve this exact puzzle.
So this is it, right? The fundamental puzzle every single nation has to solve. It's like a tightrope walk. You absolutely need a government that can act, that can lead, that can protect its people. But give one person too much authority and you risk everything. You risk losing the very freedoms that government is supposed to be defending in the first place. So how do you get it right?
And this core challenge, well, that's what we can call the executive's dilemma. Every system, every rule, every little procedure we're about to look at is really just an answer, a unique attempt to strike that perfect, delicate balance between effective leadership and keeping that power in check. Okay, so where do we even begin? Let's start with the basic blueprints. How a country actually chooses its leader tells you a whole lot about its philosophy of power. You'll find three main models out there in the world, and each one comes at that central dilemma from a totally different angle. This table here breaks it all down for us at a glance. You've got your parliamentary system, like in the UK, where the legislature, the lawmakers, are the ones who pick the leader. Then there's the presidential system, think Mexico, where power comes directly from the people in a popular vote. And finally, you have the semi-presidential system, like in Russia, which is this kind of hybrid of the other two. So let's zoom in on the parliamentary system first. The key word here is combined. The executive, who's usually called the prime minister, isn't just chosen by the legislature, they're actually part of it. In the United Kingdom, for example, the leader of the party that wins the most seats in parliament automatically becomes the prime minister. This fusion of power means getting laws passed can be a lot smoother, but it also means the executive is on a very short leash, directly accountable to that legislature, like all the time. Now let's flip the script and look at the presidential system. The big idea here is separation of powers. The people vote for their lawmakers, and then they vote again in a totally separate election for their president. You see this in countries like Mexico and Nigeria. The president is the big cheese, both the symbolic head of the country and the actual head of the government. But, and this is a big but, they have to work with a legislature that they don't control. This creates some powerful checks and balances, for sure, but it can also lead to total gridlock if the two branches just can't agree. And then we get to the hybrid, the semi-presidential system, which you'll find in a place like Russia. Here, the people directly elect a president who has some real power, but then that president appoints a prime minister who has to get the thumbs up from the legislature. This dual authority setup can lead to a really complex dance of power sharing, or, it can blow up into a huge fight over who's really calling the shots. So, you've got your system, you've chosen a leader. Now what? How do you make sure they don't just dig in, consolidate their power, and never, ever leave? This brings us to probably one of the most critical safety features you can build into a political system: term limits. They are a direct answer to that danger of a leader with too much authority for too long. But term limits are a real double-edged sword. On one hand, they're an amazing check against potential dictatorships, and they guarantee that new people and new ideas get a shot. But on the other hand, you might be forcing a really great, effective leader out of office. It can mess with policy continuity, and it creates this lame duck period where a leader's power just fades away as everyone waits for them to leave. And some countries take this really seriously. Take Mexico. A president there serves exactly one 6-year term. That's it. One and done. This rule is known as the sexenio, and it was born directly out of a long history of one-party rule. It's specifically designed to guarantee that power is always changing hands. Okay, but what if a leader needs to go before their term is up? I mean, what happens when things go really, really wrong? This leads us to the most dramatic check on executive power there is: actually removing them from office. Back in a parliamentary system, remember, power flows from the legislature to the executive. So it makes perfect sense that the legislature can also take that power away. And this isn't a criminal trial or a legal thing. It's a purely political decision. If the legislature simply loses faith in its leader, it can act. It's about losing the room, not breaking the law. The tool for this is called a vote of no confidence. You can think of it as the political emergency brake. A motion is filed, the legislature debates how the government's doing, and then they vote. If a simple majority votes no confidence, the government can be forced to step down immediately. This whole process, which you see in places like the UK, ensures the Prime Minister never forgets who's really in charge, the Parliament.
Presidential systems, completely different world. Because the president was elected directly by the people, the legislature can't just remove them over a policy disagreement or because they're unpopular. Removal, or impeachment, is a legal process, not a political one. It's reserved for serious, actual wrongdoing, what you might hear called high crimes and misdemeanors. This protects the president's mandate from the people, but it also makes it much, much harder to get rid of a leader, even a failing one. So, we've covered the blueprints, the safety features, and the emergency brakes. These are the formal rules of the game. But why do they matter so much? Because these rules aren't just abstract ideas on paper. They fundamentally shape a country's entire political life and its relationship with the people who live there.
And that brings us to the ultimate point of all this, which this quote just nails. It doesn't matter if it's a parliamentary or a presidential system, the goal of all these structures is to build a government that people actually believe in. When citizens feel like they're represented, they grant the government the one thing it needs to survive: legitimacy. That's the shared belief that its power is just and that it has the right to rule. So we end with this. We've gone through the rules as they're written down in constitutions and law books, but we all know politics is about more than that. When a crisis hits, when power is truly on the line, which of these structures and limits actually holds up? That's the line where the theory of government slams into the reality of human ambition.